We're going to write a simple script in Python that analyzes the sentiment of any text, and it's going to provide us with two key values, polarity and subjectivity. We're going to see how this can be useful for larger projects like my dissertation, and we're going to understand the sentiment in text and how it's a key part of analyzing narratives and discourse. We're going to be using Replit, which is an integrated development environment, which handles a lot of the setup and heavy lifting for us. That way, we don't have to worry about installing libraries locally. When we work with text analysis, one of the things that we want to understand is the sentiment of the text that we're dealing with. Sentiment analysis is going to help us identify whether a piece of text expresses a positive, negative, or neutral feeling. It's pretty critical for understanding large volumes of text. So that could be a novel, it could be social media posts, news articles, reviews, or even online forums. So it's an excellent way to handle large swaths of data. For my dissertation, sentiment analysis is going to be a baseline. It's going to allow me to objectively analyze the emotional tones of texts, which is going to be a foundation for investigating how different communities frame stories. So, by analyzing sentiment across time, we can better understand how emotions influence decision making, public opinion, and even investment strategies. I've written a simple Python script to get us started, and that script is going to use TextBlob library to analyze the sentiment of any sentence. By measuring polarity and subjectivity, we're going to gain a first look at the tone and emotional content of the text. First, we're going to import the TextBlob library. Now, TextBlob is a really powerful Python library built on top of Pattern, which is a library for natural language processing, or NLP for short. Basically, TextBlob is going to help us process text to extract useful data like that sentiment, right? Translations, noun phrases, and more. So TextBlob is kind of like a language assistant. It's going to look at the text, analyze it, and give us some insights. It's kind of like how we would ask a colleague for feedback on a sentence, right? Or a paragraph or a paper. TextBlob's going to read that sentence and provide that emotional score. So when we take a look at the analyze sentiment function, this function is going to take a piece of text as input, analyze it, and return that sentiment or the emotion. Inside that function, TextBlob is going to create TextBlob object. That is a special Python object that holds the text and allows us to perform various analysis on it. Blob.sentiment is going to give us two important values. Remember, it's going to give us polarity and subjectivity. Polarity is going to measure the sentiment of the text on a scale of -1 to +1. A score of -1 means that it's negative, +1 is going to be positive, and 0 is going to be completely neutral. Subjectivity is going to tell us how subjective or opinion based is a better way to frame it, how opinion based the text is. That's going to range from 0 to 1. A score of 0 is going to mean the text is entirely objective. That could be a factual statement, for example, while a score of 1 means the text is highly subjective. That means it's personal opinions, right? It's super opinionated, okay? Opinion based. That's what subjectivity is, opinion based. To understand the pattern recognition and linguistics under the hood, we got to do a little bit more research on TextBlob. Okay. It's going to work through pattern recognition. It's going to analyze the structure and context of words and sentences. It uses linguistic resources to identify which words are associated with positive or negative emotions. That library of TextBlob relies on a collection of pre existing words that are classified with sentiment scores. When it reads a new sentence, it can match words in that sentence with the predefined library to estimate sentiment. Thus, it uses patterns of language. It's looking at how words are typically used in context to generate the analysis. Think of a student who's memorized which words go often with happy feelings. We got love, great, versus sad ones like hate and bad. TextBlob uses this knowledge to analyze the sentence. One drawback is that it is predefined, right? If you have a term or a sentence that's very different in its context and it's accepted or very polarized in a community, we need to account for that. So right now, what we've set up does not account for that. It's pre-defined. defined on these relationships between words. Next, we're going to set up a simple sentence. Have a great day is the sentence. You'll see me cycle through some examples here, but have a great day. That's the text we want to analyze. You can swap it out for any sentence that you want to see and modify how the sentiment changes. So if you replace have a great day with I'm having a terrible day, text blob is going to return a much lower polarity score, right? It's going to be more negative in the sentiment. Now we're going to call the analyze sentiment function. We're going to pass in the sentence. The function is going to process the text, give us a sentiment object, and that object's going to have polarity and subjectivity values. After that, we've got to print out the sentiment analysis. Think of this as literally going to your printer. You wrote the paper, we wrote the code, we did it all. We're going to hit print, and it's going to output our paper, right? This is going to show the sentence along with its polarity and subjectivity scores. Let's talk a little bit more about Replit's role. Replit makes it really easy for us. It's an online platform that handles majority of the setup for us. This is the libraries like TextBlob because it's ready to go. So we don't have to install them manually. All you need to do is write your code and click run, and Replit is going to execute it. This way we can focus on coding and analysis without worrying about the technical setup. So right now, this is exactly where we want to have our sentiment analysis. So we wrote a simple Python script using TextBlob. We've got the code. We covered every step in the process. We talked about polarity and subjectivity, and we also saw how TextBlob does the heavy lifting for us using pattern recognition with a library of predefined words. So if you are working on a project that involves text analysis, sentiment analysis is an excellent tool to start with. We have the code here. Feel free to try it out, modify the sentences, and see how the sentiment changes. Hope this helps. Catch you in the next one.